The state of Assam is going to witness a historic event, the inauguration of an emergency landing facility on the Moran Bypass in Dibrugarh district today. What's this all about? Well, an emergency landing facility is what's going to actually be inaugurated by the Prime Minister who will be landing there. It's going to be the first of its kind in the Northeast. The Prime Minister will be dedicating this facility to the nation, to India. It opened on an unidentified stretch, on an identified, stretch of the highway as an alternative to be used during contingencies, perhaps war as well. Now, this is very, very important because in the next 15, 20 odd minutes, along with experts, I will tell you exactly why this is critical. It's not ordinary to be landing aircraft which cost anything in the range of $100 million a piece, like the Rafale, on a runway, right? And we all know the state of our roads. So let me just explain what this is all about. So let's have that map up just to give our viewers of where exactly this is going to be opened. So this is Assam's emergency landing strip. The Prime Minister will be landing over there. That's Assam marked in yellow, and the red dot that you see over there, if we can just zoom in to that red dot, is an area close to the Moran Bypass. Obviously, the red dot is a bit large, but it's in that area to the northeast of Assam that this emergency landing facility has been opened, or it's going to be inaugurated soon. And here's another look at it. We'll bring you the exact latitude and longitude. We'll freeze over here for just a moment. This is the stretch of the highway which has been reinforced to accommodate transport aircraft. The Prime Minister will likely be landing in a Hercules transport aircraft, but fighter aircraft as well, right? We've got a couple of these in other parts of the country. This is the first of its kind in the northeast of the country. This is an extremely sensitive area. We've got a lot of air bases ranged against the Chinese. Let me talk a little bit about that and then break down why this becomes important. What you see on your screen marked in green are Indian Air Force's air bases ranged against the Chinese air bases. So all along the line of actual control, right, lay to the west of the line of actual control, and then going down, then there's Bareilly, there is Gorakhpur ranged against China, Darbhanga much smaller, Purnia much smaller, Bagdogra is important, Hashimara, a frontline Air Force base. Hashimara, if we just focus on Hashimara for a moment, that's actually quite important and interesting. So this is Hashimara over here that you can see. And what I thought we do is actually focus a little, talk a little bit about Hashimara. You've got the 2nd Rafale Squadron over here. And this particular area, which I'm pointing out over here, which lies to the north of Bengal, to the south of Bhutan, and to the southeast of Nepal, is called the Chicken's Neck, right? This entire area is where India is particularly vulnerable, which is why during the Doklam crisis, just zoom out a little bit. Yeah, zoom out a little bit more. The worry was during the Doklam crisis that if there was any effort by the Chinese to come close, they would try and cut this area off. So these are the other air bases that you see on your screen in green. So there's Tezpur, Hashimara, Jorhat, and Chabua on the screen. And lined up against them are all of these Chinese air bases over here. So there's Stingri, Shigatse, Damsung, Lhasa, Lunze, Ningchi, Mainling, and Chamdo, Bangda. They've deployed a lot of assets over here. So if there was a war between India and China, God forbid, then a lot of our frontline bases would be targeted. We would be targeting their bases as well. It's important to understand that fighter aircraft are extremely vulnerable to attack on the ground, particularly if there are missile attacks, which is why you need to have alternate facilities where they can be deployed. So just under this area is where that emergency landing facility has been set up. So let's, in fact, now that you've got a broader idea, go across to an animation or a package which I'm going to describe to you on what this is meant to actually do. So let's have that up, please, on why exactly it is that we want that emergency landing facility to be set up. So can we have that first page? Right. Now this is important. It's the first highway for emergency air operations in a sense. Change to the next point. Let's have that animation. Right. So this is not exactly what I wanted right now. We wanted the animation package to come up. The airfield is for relief operations in remote areas. So essentially, as I introduce my guests, let me give you a few more details, and we'll bring up the correct set of images in a little while from now. I was explaining to you how in the event of a military, this is the one, we've got it up right now. So the highway turns a runway. It's a 10-step war scenario which we've tried to explain. Now these are animated pictures, so bear with that. So if there is an air war which is on, then forward bases of the Indian Air Force could potentially come under challenge or threat from the Chinese. We've indicated that over here. What do these fighter aircraft actually do? Let's go to the next page. These fighter aircraft need bases to land on. IAF jets would also be in the air fighting a battle. If their bases have already been targeted, then IAF jets low on fuel after, let's say, a mission along the border would need an alternate facility, and that's where an emergency landing facility is absolutely critical. Let's go to the next page, right? And so this is a stretch of highway. Again, this is AI generated, but it's exactly what this emergency landing facility would look like for a pilot. It's a national highway. It's been reinforced. It's broad enough and it's long enough for landings to actually take place. Let's go to the next page. So pilots would be diverted over there. The highway would be sealed. Traffic would be cleared. The perimeter would be secured as these planes come into land. Go to the next page. And what the Indian Air Force would immediately be doing over there is to set up a mobile air traffic control and an operational center. This they would do on a rail quick time basis to enable aircraft to land over here. Planes would be coming down over here. Right, fighter planes would land on this runway, but the operations don't necessarily end. They could be refueled and redeployed and rearmed within moments. So they'd move to a dispersal area. This is, in fact, a rail picture of a Sukhoi 30, after having landed in one of these areas in the past. The engines would be hot. That means they would be refueling with the engines hot. But if you're fighting a war, you want to get these planes up as far as possible. Missiles, bombs would be loaded from mobile units, and these planes would be made ready to fly out immediately after that. The pilot stays in the cockpit very often. A turnaround in minutes as soon as possible, and then you're back in the air flying. So that's exactly what we are talking about. Jets take off, they're back in combat. But there are other facilities or other requirements as well. For example, humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, that becomes a critical area. Let's just go across to Shreyashi, NDTV's correspondent over there. Thanks very much for being with us. Give us an idea of what's happening around you. How far are you from the emergency landing facility? And tell us what we can expect in the hours ahead.
Well, we are slightly away from the venue because as the Prime Minister arrives, the jammers do come on and it becomes difficult for us to broadcast from the spot. But of course, we have seen the facility itself, and it's absolutely wonderful how civilian, infrastructure is doubling up as defense infrastructure in the country as well. And it's absolutely an historic day here in Assam. The Chief Minister is heading towards the venue right now. The Defense Minister will be there. The Governor of Assam is going to be present, and of course Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to be landing at 9:50. Thereafter he will be proceeding to the site, the 4.2 kilometer stretch, which is also going to be an emergency landing facility. The IF is already positioned here. Their tents have been put up. There's going to be an air show once the Prime Minister inaugurates that stretch, and this entire stretch on the Moran Bypass is going to not only be showcasing India's defense strength, but also become a very, very strategic position in the northeast as this particular facility comes into play after the Prime Minister's inauguration. And we will be getting you all those details once the Prime Minister lands. And of course, there is a Rafale show. Sukhois have been lined up for that mega air show, and the Prime Minister himself will be taking off from this newly inaugurated 4.2 kilometer stretch on the Moran Bypass for Guwahati. So he also will be using this emergency landing facility himself. But of course, all eyes on the big planes landing today in this newly inaugurated facility by the Prime Minister of the country.
All right, thanks very much for being with us. We'll keep coming back to you. The Prime Minister will be landing in that facility at about 10:30 this morning. It's the first airstrip of its kind in the northeast of the country. Air Vice Marshal P.K. Srivastava with us, Group Captain Dr. M.J. Augustine Vinod with us, and my friend Abhijit Iyer Mitra, Senior Fellow, Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies. Abhijit, to you first, because I have a bias towards Abhijit. He's a friend of mine. This is established for various reasons, but it's critical because it fulfills a certain tactical requirement. It's very close to the chicken's neck in the larger context. It's ranged against Chinese air bases as well, and therefore you need to have an alternative facility. Is that basically why we have this?
Yes, and we also need to understand there's been a huge disparity between the Ladakh front and the Assam front. The Ladakh front, which is, Angari is probably the biggest base and set of bases out there. That is very thinly infrastructured on the Chinese supply side. There are lots of bases there, but the supply lines are very thin. On the other hand, on the eastern front, China has the bulk of its logistics and infrastructure heading into Lhasa, and then from there on to Shigatse. So it's very important that you created, diversion air bases and secondary air bases out there, because that is where the bulk of Chinese missile attacks would come from. Now, we also need to remember the Chinese have a huge stockpile of cruise missiles and things like that. And that is exactly where you need diversion and secondary air bases. When your primary air bases are taken out during a war, you'll have to operate out of secondary air bases. That said, it's also interesting that we're building these kind of very broad, wide highways and expanding them to the northeast, because normally the roads that go up there are extremely narrow, and we've all been on some of those roads. We've also been on those Ladakh roads where, at one point it used to be single file. For about 10 kilometers, trucks could only come on one side, and then the other side would move. And so you're bulking this up not only in terms of road supply, you're also creating that secondary redundancy air infrastructure.
Vice Marshal Srivastava, we've got these in a couple of parts of the country now. Again, I think it's important to remind our viewers that an air war is not a T20 cricket match. It's not just sixes which India can hit. There will also be occasions when we will lose aircraft on the ground, which is why to have an alternative facility like this is, a step in realism, that this is how a battle can take place. We may sustain losses to our air bases, and we need alternative facilities. Is that right?
Vishnu, let me tell you one thing, that you yourself are a great air power watcher, and you keep a track of all the aircraft and how different AMCA or Tejas, they are coming up. This kind of facility and paying attention to Northeast is a great welcome step. As a veteran, we feel it was one of those neglected areas. And we need to strengthen, because the Chinese strength on the other side is much heavier, much weightier than what we have on our side. Now we started paying attention. We positioned our Rafale over there, the Su-30 squadrons there. I have worked in and I've served the eastern sector. So this is a great welcome change. And if there's a tempo of war, we all expect that they'll be, we will be targeted, our main air bases will be targeted. So you need to have flexibility, as you rightly pointed out in your, earlier when you're prepping up the whole show, that you need all kinds of facilities to come up. So this has to be practiced and put into our part of the air power, integrated into the system. Making just the runway is not the end and be all of everything. You need to rearm, refuel, see if there is a battle damage, take care of that. All that will need a lot of other things coming up, apart from ATC and the wide runway, broad road we got. So these things have to be factored in. That means once it comes in play and becomes the part of the strategic air power, we need to keep practicing on this. How are we going to operate in terms of emergencies, and what is our turnaround time? And turnaround time is very, very important factor here, because when you're in tempo of war, we don't expect this runway also to be left, but it has certain kind of, as I see the location is central of the Assam, it has radar kind of horizon covered, because there's a, up north in Arunachal Pradesh, we have steep mountains. So it won't be so easy. And because of the forests around, maybe some, satellite visibility will also be hindered. So we expect this to be a great asset for the nation. And it's an add-on which was very much needed. And we all know that we need to focus on northeastern sector.
Okay, so
not only because of the chicken neck, but because of the kind of forces we have around across.
Let's just keep the strike rotating. I'll come back to you in a moment. Group Captain Vinod, I think the entire point about being able to sustain a battle, and I think the Air Marshal makes an important point when he says that, planes land, they need to be refueled, rearmed. There is hot refueling, which is a difficult proposition. And, the battle must continue. That requires very specialized training. It requires the area to be completely covered off. Could you tell us how that would actually happen during a war?
Thank you, Vishnu. I thought I'm also your friend. Be that as it may.
Abhijit Go ahead.
So right behind me, what you see is I was in charge or looking after ensuring that Mirage 2000s, C-130s and helicopters and all landed in the Lucknow-Agra Expressway, and that is the picture.
And we marked that out. Those are the states where, we've got these facilities. Go ahead, yeah.
Yeah. Very important point, Abhijit, your better friend Abhijit made, is the Hotan and Gargungza are very, very important bases, but they are north of, they are basically addressing the Leh Ladakh area.
Yeah.
Here, in this part of the world, we have Gongar, Shigatse, Pangta, and two new ones have come up, but they are not fully equipped as such. But what we are missing is our two major bases which have come up across Myanmar in the Kunming district, called Baushan and Dali.
Yeah.
I have been watching Baushan and Dali as they are coming up for over a decade now. And today, Baushan and Dali both are civilian as well as military runway. And most important, Vishnu, for us to understand is from Chabua to Kunming is same as Chabua to Bagdogra. Baushan and Dali are like, Chabua to maybe Guwahati. It is that close. So for us to, project power in this from the side that China may launch, I've been writing about it, may launch its first offensive, may not be from north, will be from east, southeast.
Yeah.
Is this place has sort of plugged the hole. Not many people know, other than Chabua, we also have Mohanbadi, another runway, and another runway which belongs to ARC, which is very, very close.
Right.
So we have 3 runways there, plus this strip here. And as I see on the video that he provided, there are facilities have also come up next to this Moran Hut. And Moran Hut is, this is the place I took over command. Moran Hut is where we used to go.
So Moran is where this
on Sundays.
Place. That's the location of this. So that is
Moran Hut is.
Sure.
Moran Hut used to.
Got it. Abhijit, this also has an important role when it comes to humanitarian missions. The fact that this is broad enough for C-130 Hercules aircraft to land, that's what the Prime Minister, I believe, is going to be flying in. It sort of indicates that it's quite versatile, right?
So versatility is key to everything. Unless you're able to multitask from every single base, you essentially expose weaknesses. Now, if you're spending for infrastructure, why not make it as versatile as possible? I think that's the philosophy behind it, but also very specifically in terms of war. Everybody thinks of war as simply just fighters taking off and, doing all the snazzy stuff, firing missiles and things. There is there's the not snazzy stuff, the logistics supply, the
in fact, most of it is not very glamorous. Yeah.
Exactly. It's the non-glamorous stuff. And more importantly, also medical evacuation that will most probably have to happen during wartime from there, which is why this becomes really important in that sense.
No, it does. And Air Marshal, to build on Abhijit's point, during Op Sindoor, we saw how India created a couple of air bases, runways in a couple of air bases in Pakistan. We hit their aircraft inside hangars in Bholari and in Jacobabad. This is in the event of war, we would lose assets on the ground. We might lose air bases on the ground as well. And that's one of the key reasons why we have this, yes?
Yeah, Vishnu. One point I would like to bring in that we were able to hit them so strongly and in Opsandor, and I would say that because we had the air dominance and the air defense system was completely neutralized.
Yes.
So idea is when the seed operations come up, so we will be taking care of that. So we need to keep our air defense cover alive before as Mitra said, that there's a I would say glamorous and non-snaggy stuff which goes on, maintaining the logistics supply chain, maintaining the weapons status, maintaining the missile status, maintaining the battle damaged aircraft when they come back, making them combat worthy. All these things are not so visible, and keeping your air defense alive so that you can really hit whenever something comes. So if you factor in everything, then the integrated picture comes in mind that yes, any asset which comes up, we need to spread the asset, we need to spread our reach where the aircraft can land, where others can go and launch the strike, and you can survive. So it'll be survival first. We were able to suppress the enemy radars and enemy capabilities to attack us when we were able to do the runways in Op Sindhu. I think similar tempo will go on. But if we engage with the Chinese, we expect that tempo will be faster than what it was other side. Because here you are going to engage with an adversary which is supposed to be better armed, better prepared, with better technology and better kind of stealth power. So all that will come in play. So any addition on this side and thinking on the government, I'm really impressed with the thinking of the government. This is one place where we need to focus. As my friend Augustine brought out, that it's not only from that border, the things are getting strengthened nearby too.
Yeah,
and they have to be factored in.
But, Group Captain Vinod, it's interesting that several countries around the world, have such facilities because they also see that dispersed operations are key. The Swedes, for example, have designed aircraft such as the Gripen around the concept of land on a highway, refuel, rearm, and fly again. And they've got an entire network of highways just to sustain this. Other air forces as well. So this is actually a key part of military strategy in many air forces and countries.
True. In fact, we took a leaf out of, and you'll be surprised.
The Pakistanis did it before us, yeah.
Yeah. So Pakistan did before us, and they took a leaf out of Swedish, help, and we probably followed suit. And better late than never, but we did it probably, Vishnu, much better in many more places, and with not for show, but with strategy in mind.
Yeah.
And I completely go with both of them. The not snazzy stuff is very, very important, especially in this place. We are looking at, and you've been there, Vishnu, we are looking at 4 major axes falling back. So when there is ground war, you have 4 major valleys coming back to this axis, and from here is where you're going to take the wounded and maimed soldier to probably Guwahati or any other important medical facilities, maybe in Kolkata. So it is like I said, you can't overstress the importance of this, and probably Modi will be the first prime minister to land on a road. That itself is a very big strategic message for all and sundry out there who are watching this. I don't know how many US presidents have landed on a road on a military aircraft, or any president for that matter in this world. So that and the strategic message of us developing all over India is a very big strategic message. Over to you, Vishnu.
Abhijit, and let's just bring up that map, if we can, of the Indian air bases and the Chinese air bases ranged against each other. That's just coming up in a moment. Let's talk a little bit, Abhijit, about the Chicken's Neck. That's a critical area. There is a vulnerability over there. During the Doklam crisis, there was a real worry that China would be pushing south and India, would be constrained. The Seven Sisters in the northeast might, in fact, be impacted. Strategically, how important is this region?
Well, strategically, literally like the Chicken's Neck, it controls all your ground access to the the northeast.
Yeah.
Now, it's important here to stress that when you look at Chinese infrastructure in the north of Sikkim,
Yeah.
we need to understand a air planner looks at infrastructure very differently from a ground planner. For a ground planner, that infrastructure is a great threat, which is and it's uphill, so it's much more costly for you to attack. But it's also a delight for every air planner because it becomes a target-rich environment. And literally every air person I talk to, when they see the amount of infrastructure China puts there, they get very thrilled because they've got more targets to hit. Literal, tangible reduction of enemy capability if the Chinese become active enemies at that point, of course. Now, that said, we also need to understand that it's not that, this chicken's neck is a particularly weak area. We've understood this capability, this imbalance for a very long time, and we've prepared for it. Now, the Swedes, like you said, developed the Gripen around a strategy of deployment to, rural highways and things like that. What's the Indian innovation out here is we've taken aircraft that are not designed for things like that, but we've operationally adapted them to these kind of, remote area operation situations, which is quite innovative. If you remember, even the Osa class boats that the Navy bought from the Russians, the Russians always
hammered the Karachi harbor with, yes.
Yes, and we were the first people to actually use it in offensive ops, which the Russians didn't even think was possible at that point of time. So, that kind of tactical innovation, that is what really tells you about the caliber of decision making and war planning, and in a positive way.
Group Captain Vinod, quickly before we take a short break, hot refueling is a concept many of our viewers may not know about. But I suppose a lot of the operations of emergency landing facilities like this are premised on the ability to hot refuel. Why is that challenging?
A very good question, Vishnu. There are some aircraft, legacy aeroplanes, you could not do hot refueling because the fuel tank had to be pressurized and stay under pressure for the engines to run. If you depressurize the tank, then the gravity feed leads to something called a suction feed condition, where the high pressure fuel pump now goes into something called a cavitation. So these problems exist in legacy aeroplane. Modern aeroplane, these problems have been addressed. So when you are refueling an aeroplane, you need to depressurize the tank. And in some cases, you may not be able to refuel a drop tank because the drop tank always stays under pressure. So these are few challenges that Indian Air Force have overcome using our own innovative technique, which maybe we are not at liberty to discuss. But bottom line is that today all our aeroplanes have the capability. All our aeroplanes currently in our inventory are capable of hot refueling, which we have done in-house, and that itself speaks volumes about our engineers and their innovative capabilities, Vishnu.
And that's very important. It's also a dangerous process, and that's something that needs to be kept in mind. We're going to take a short break at this stage, and we'll keep tracking this just for the benefit of our viewers. 10:30 p.m. is when the Prime Minister will be landing in that facility in Moran on an emergency landing airstrip in Assam, the first in the northeast. Why is it significant? We'll keep talking about that. Do stay tuned.